Getting all systems go here. I'm still sweaty from our exercise routine. Yeah, I don't know. I might even want to shower off. Once my body returns to normal temperature, then I'll be less sweaty anyway. So a shower might not be necessary. I think it's a good idea to conserve water too. Okay, mindfulness. I'll guide us through a quick exercise to speed us toward that point. Okie dokie. Hopefully it's easy to execute. Okay. Alright, we can try mindful seeing, and for the purpose of this activity and exercise, it's like you're looking through a window. For you all, the window that you're looking through is the window represented by the camera through my phone. So it's like the window into my world. And for the purposes of this exercise and activity, just use the things that you see on my screen as your window. Okay. Alrighty. For some, the absence of visual stimuli can feel stifling. Most of the information that we perceive is through the use of our vision. And most people don't even really think about it. Like, if you're in like the mall or something like that, any kind of public space, even an office, like a dental office, it's like the first things you see are the first pieces of information that your brain processes, because it's the visual stimuli that you're receiving first, before you're able to smell, before you can hear most sounds. You see first. I'd say most of the information that our brain receives is through our vision. After all, it says, a healthy imagination does not come naturally to everyone. I'd say that's true. And something that I personally have encountered, particularly this year, with a shift from primarily consuming to creating more. I am developing more creative ideas. I'm creating more through TikTok and Twitch. And it's created a shift in my thinking. And simultaneously, I'm also running into creative obstacles. Things that writers have to confront. The challenge of coming up with creative ideas. For some, it can seem extremely simple and easy. It's like, commentary and jokes. For some people, it's really easy to come up with those jokes, but for others, like people like me, it can be challenging to come up with those creative ideas. It's like the power of imagination. It is very true that over time, our imagination grows dull. When we're kids and we've got that wide-eyed wonder, it's like everything is new, everything is unique, everything is wonderful and colorful. It's like our imaginations are the most vibrant. As a result of this, when I was a kid, I dreamt more often. I would have dreams, I would have nightmares. I remember there being that movie Mars Attacks, and I was extremely afraid of aliens when I was a very small kid. And I couldn't even fall asleep that night because I was so afraid of aliens attacking. But it's like over time, we start to see that sort of stuff, those concepts, those science fiction ideas, through a different lens. It's like you understand that it's not what you thought it was originally. Your understanding and perception of the world changes as a result of your age, your experience. Things that you get exposed to change those perceptions over time, and in turn dull your sense of imagination, because you see kind of the same things over and over again. But anyway, yeah, healthy imagination does not come naturally to everyone. Some people are naturally more creative than others. And historically, I've been more of the non-creative type in the past. But I'm trying to become more creative as a person over time. And for people like me, it's actually pretty challenging because I started pretty late in life creating things. The activity of mindful seeing may be helpful to anyone who identifies with this. So these kinds of activities can be helpful for people who might be more like me somewhat now, and more so the way that I was. People who are creatively challenged, people who may be less imaginative. And I don't know, I think some creative ideas just take time to develop. Simply put, you'll notice this on YouTube, where it's like some creators will release videos more frequently, and it's because they have a simple formula behind their content. Other channels, particularly the ones that do like deep dives and stuff like that, it's like commentaries of like movies or cartoon series or television shows. It takes a long time to develop those scripts, edit those videos. I think that's the reason why some channels on YouTube, for just one example, tend to release videos less frequently than others, because it's the time that it takes for the creative process. And that challenging process is the same exact reason why studios like The Simpsons and even South Park's writing team they have so many people on the writing teams, because they have different people offering different ideas, bouncing ideas off of one another. It is true that two heads are better than one, and sometimes that concept plays out in the development of some of these programs. Okay. It is a simple exercise. Excuse me. And by the way, this mindfulness exercise is one that I'm taking from positivepsychology.com. Mindfulness exercises, techniques, activities. And there are 22 total on here, but I'm focusing on just one mindfulness thing. It is a simple exercise requiring only a window with some kind of view. As I've said, for our purposes, you can use the window that you're using to view me through the lens of the camera of my phone. The facilitator guides the group following these steps. Alright, and I'll be the facilitator. Find a space at a window where there are sights to be seen. Look at everything there is to see. Avoid labeling and categorizing what you see. Instead, thinking fan or chair. Try to notice the colors, patterns, or textures. So for example, black, gray, or silver, white. Like for example, this closet door is white. Even the texture, it's like smooth. You guys can't exactly feel the chair that I'm in, but it is smooth. Similarly, this closet door is also smooth. Pay attention to the movement of the chair. In this example, they're using outside, so you could also pay attention to the movement of grass, leaves. For our purposes, it could be the movement of my chair, how it swivels. Yeah, there's not really much movement happening in this frame, other than my lips, of course, and my fingers. But hey, movement's movement. Okay. Notice the many different types of shapes present in this small segment of the world that you can see. Try to see the world outside the window from the perspective of someone unfamiliar with these sights. So imagine as though you're seeing these things for the first time. Maybe like a person from the medieval era. Or maybe even an early caveman. Or you could also imagine yourself from the perspective of someone far enough into the future as well. Because someone 2,000 or 3,000 years into our future might be looking at some of these things as though they had never seen them before. Fans of this design, the tower fan, might be completely obsolete by that time. Be observant, but not critical. Be aware, but not fixated. It's okay to focus on different things. Now, there's not really a whole lot happening here, but if I rotate the camera a little bit, all of a sudden there's a whole new world. It's like my door, door cover, my jackets, all those things are things that it's okay to observe. If you become distracted, gently pull your mind away from those thoughts and notice a color or shape again to put you back in the right frame of mind. And yeah, this can just as easily be extended to outside too. And if I can pull from my own experience and use it as an example, and use it as my own example, I could say that my walk could be one example. It's like you see mountains. That could be one thing that you see. Could be houses, buildings, rocks, grasses, all these different things that you're taking in. Could be cloud patterns in the sky. We didn't have any clouds today, but we did have some yesterday. It's like, it's kind of like cloud gazing. It's like you can look up there, try to imagine different shapes. Like, hey, that one looks like a boat. That one over there looks like a butterfly. Similar to that. And this is saying that you can even focus on simple colors, shapes, and textures. So using the mountain as an example, rigid, brown. We're talking about texture, rocky, maybe sandy, dirty. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like dirty's kind of. I don't know. I guess it's okay. It doesn't really matter much. Sandy would be a good one though. Sandy would be great. There's an extensive group treatment plan by Fleming and Kokovsky's 2007 that offers a glimpse into how to use mindfulness in any kind of group session and provides detailed worksheets, exercises, and handouts which can provide inspiration and guidance for group facilitation. I don't really have a way or means of getting those materials to you folks, but I think the exercise was a good activity for us to try, and one that you can also extend to your own different settings, your own different sets of experiences. You can just as easily apply these mindfulness exercises and practices to your own experience. Okay, and that one was called Mindful Seeing. Before I forget, I'm going to need to get a refill. So we'll have a quick intermission, and then when I return, we'll have our reading series for the day. Be right back, folks. Okay. Whew. And we're back. Alright, yeah, lighting, guys and girls, is always going to be a challenge. Especially this time of day. I'm waking up later nowadays because my whole sleep schedule has changed. I'm just not up as early, but conversely, that means I will be able to stream later in the day. I'll be able to stream into the evening, so it's just another one of life's trade-offs. Okay, so let's see here. Before I forget to mention, thank you so much for watching. Please remember to follow if you'd like to see more Stormer Show content. And yes, as always, thank you for watching. Okie, War and Peace. We're in chapter 26. We got a chance to get a sneak peek into the relationship of Julie Caragina and Princess Mary. The gray-haired valet was sitting drowsily, listening to the snoring of the prince. And of course, everyone was talking about how Pierre inherited Count Bezukhov's fortune, much to the chagrin of Prince Vasily and Princess Catherine. The gray-haired valet was sitting drowsily, listening to the snoring of the prince, who was in his large study. From the far side of the house, through the closed doors, came the sound of difficult passages, 20 times repeated, of a sonata by Dussek. Just then, a closed carriage and another with a hood drove up to the porch. Prince Andrew got out of the carriage, helped his little wife to alight, and let her pass into the house before him. Old Tikhon, wearing a wig, put his head out of the door of the antechamber, reported in a whisper that the prince was sleeping, and hastily closed the door. I need to enunciate more carefully for some of these words. Hastily closed the door. Tikhon knew that neither the sun's arrival nor any other unusual event must be allowed to disturb the appointed order of the day. Prince Andrew apparently knew this as well as Tikhon. He looked at his watch as if to ascertain whether his father's habits had changed since he was at home last. And having assured himself that they had not, he turned to his wife. Excuse me. Yeah, Leo Tolstoy, I'd say he's one of those authors that presents a lot of characters. In this chapter alone, we've already seen Prince Andrew, Old Tikhon, and Prince Andrew's wife. Is that Princess Mary? Yeah, it's hard to tell from the previous chapter because most of the chapter is focused on that correspondence between Julie and Mary. I'll just keep reading and see if he reveals it to us in this chapter. He will get up in 20 minutes. Let us go across to Mary's room, he said. The little princess had grown stouter during this time, but her eyes and her short, downy, smiling lip lifted when she began to speak just as merrily and prettily as ever. Why, this is a palace, she said to her husband, looking around with the expression with which people compliment their host at a ball. And actually, this is really good characterization on the part of Leo. We could tell a lot about Mary's character. Through her correspondence with Julie, we know she's religious. And based on her statements about Tikhon's place, we know that she is herself not so affluent, not used to this level of extravagance and luxury. So there's a lot of observations that can be made based on how she reacts to what she's seeing. Let's come, quick. With a glance around, she smiled at Tikhon, at her husband, and at the footman who accompanied them. Is that Mary practicing? Let's go quietly and take her by surprise. Prince Andrew followed her with a courteous but sad expression. You've grown older, Tikhon, he said in passing to the old man, who kissed his hand. Before they reached the room from which the sounds of the clavichord came, the pretty, fair-haired Frenchwoman, Mademoiselle Bourrienne, see, there's another character, Mademoiselle Bourrienne, rushed out apparently beside herself with delight. Ah, what joy for the princess, exclaimed she. At last, I must let her know. No, please not. You are Mademoiselle Bourrienne, said the little princess, kissing her. I know you already through my sister-in-law's friendship for you. She was not expecting us? They went up to the door of the sitting room from which came the sound of the oft-repeated passage of the sonata. Prince Andrew stopped and made a grimace, as if expecting something unpleasant. The little princess entered the room. The passage broke off in the middle. A cry was heard. Then Princess Mary's heavy tread and the sound of kissing. Again, it's like very good characterization. When Prince Andrew went into... When Prince Andrew went in, the two princesses, who had only met once before for a short time at his wedding, were in each other's arms, warmly pressing their lips to whatever place they happened to touch. Mademoiselle Bourrienne stood near them, pressing her hand to her heart, with a beatific smile, and obviously equally ready to cry or to laugh. Prince Andrew shrugged his shoulders and frowned, as lovers of music do when they hear a false note. It's like, yeah, and that's something that I'm getting better at too, in terms of playing piano. I'm getting better at recognizing when I play the wrong key. It's like, you'll just know. It's kind of like the way like Neo sees the Matrix in a way, is like how some people see music. It's like you just know when something doesn't sound right. And music aficionados and musicians both have this ability. It's like they can hear the rhythm. They can hear when something sounds off. And Prince Andrew's the same way. Two women let go of one another, and then, as if afraid of being too late, seized each other's hands, kissing them and pulling them away, and again began kissing each other on the face. And then, to Prince Andrew's surprise, both began to cry and kissed again. Mademoiselle Bourrienne also began to cry. Prince Andrew evidently felt ill at ease, but to the two women it seemed quite natural that they should cry. And apparently it never entered their heads that it could have been otherwise at this meeting. Ah, my dear, Mary, they suddenly exclaimed and then laughed. I dreamed last night. You were not expecting us? Ah, Mary, you've got thinner, and you have grown stouter. I knew the princess at once, put in Mademoiselle Bourrienne. And I had no idea, exclaimed Princess Mary. Ah, Andrew, I did not see you. Prince Andrew and his sister, hand in hand, kissed one another, and he told her that she was still the same crybaby as ever. Okay, so it's kind of hard to tell. It's like, so Prince Andrew's, my understanding, is married to Princess Mary, and Mademoiselle Berry and her friends, of course. Does that mean Prince Andrew's sister is married? Excuse me. Does that mean Prince Andrew's sister is Mademoiselle Berry? I don't know. I'm getting confused by some of these relationships. Prince Andrew and his sister, hand in hand, kissed one another, and he told her that she was still the same crybaby as ever. Princess Mary had turned to... Okay, so Princess Mary and Prince Andrew are brother and sister, based on what I'm understanding from this. Princess Mary had turned toward her brother, and through her tears, the loving, warm, gentle look of her large, luminous eyes, very beautiful at that moment, rested on Prince Andrew's face. The little princess talked incessantly, her short, downy upper lip continually and rapidly touching her rosy nether lip when necessary, and drawing up again next moment when her face broke into a smile of glittering teeth and sparkling eyes. She told of an accident that they had on the Spassky Hill, which might have been serious for her and her condition, and immediately after that informed them that she left all her clothes in Petersburg, and that heaven knew what she would have to dress in here, and that Andrew had quite changed, and that Kitty Odintsova had married an old man, and that there was a suitor for Mary, a real one, but that they would talk of that later. Princess Mary was still looking silently at her brother, and her beautiful eyes were full of love and sadness. It was plain that she was following a train of thought independent of her sister-in-law's words. In the midst of a description of the last Petersburg feat, she addressed her brother. "So are you really going to the war, Andrew?" she said, sighing. Lee sighed too. "Yes, and even tomorrow," replied her brother. "He is leaving me here, God knows why, when he might have had a promotion." Princess Mary did not listen to the end, but continuing her train of thought, turned to her sister-in-law with a tender glance at her figure. "Is it certain?" she said. The face of the little princess changed. She sighed and said, "Yes, quite certain. Ah, it's very dreadful." Her lip descended. She brought her face to her sister-in-law's and unexpectedly began to cry. I think he's got pretty good chances, knowing what we know about Russia's role in the Napoleonic Wars. But I guess you never really know who's going to die on the front line in any armed conflict. But if he's royalty, it seems like he'd fare he'd have good chances of faring well. We'll have to wait and see. "She needs rest," said Prince Andrew with a frown. "Don't you, Lise? Take her to your room and I'll go to father. How is he? Just the same?" "Yes, just the same. Though I don't know what your opinion will be," answered the princess joyfully. "And are the hours the same? And the walks in the avenues? And the lathe?" asked Prince Andrew with a scarcely perceptible smile which showed that, in spite of all of his love and respect for his father, he was aware of his weakness. "The hours are the same, and the lathe, and also the mathematics and my geometry lessons," said Prince Mary gleefully, as if her lessons in geometry were among the greatest delights of her life. When the 20 minutes had elapsed, and the time had come for the old prince to get up, Tikhon came to call the young prince to his father. The old man made a departure from his usual routine in honor of his son's arrival. He gave orders to admit him to his apartments while he dressed for dinner. The old prince always dressed in old-fashioned style, wearing an antique coat and powdered hair, and when Prince Andrew entered his father's dressing room, not with the contemptuous look and manner he wore in drawing rooms, but with the animated face with which he talked to Pierre. The old man was sitting on a large leather-covered chair, wrapped in a powdery mantle and trusting his head to Tikhon. "Ah, here's the warrior. wants to vanquish Bonaparte, said the old man, shaking his powdered head as much as the tail which Tikhon was holding fast a plate would allow. You at least must tackle him properly, or else if he goes on like this he'll soon have us too, for his subjects. How are you? And he held out his cheek. The old man was in a good temper after his nap before dinner. He used to say that a nap after dinner was silver, before dinner golden. Hard to say why that is. Like, I would think it would be the other way around. It's like you feel somewhat lethargic after a big meal. It's like, I've already ate. Your blood sugar spikes and then it crashes, and when it crashes you'll have that like drowsiness following a meal. But I don't know, I've never really heard about a nap that is good before, but I guess in his case it is. He cast happy sidelong glances at his son from under his thick bushy eyebrows. And yeah, it's just hard for me to keep track of all these characters. It's like Tikhon, Prince Andrew, Princess Mary, Lise, for that matter, Mademoiselle Bourienne. Yeah. Prince Andrew went up and kissed his father on the spot indicated to him. So it's like Prince Andrew is the son of old Tikhon. He made no reply on his father's favorite topic, making fun of the military men of the day, and more particularly of Bonaparte. Yes, father, I've come to you and brought my wife who is pregnant, said Prince Andrew, following every movement of his father's face with an eager and respectful look. How's her health? Only fools and rakes fall ill, my boy. You know me. I am busy from morning till night. I have to look up this word to make sure I'm pronouncing it correctly. And abstemious. That means not self-indulgent, especially when eating and drinking. Okay. Yeah, so it's like they stop after one drink, basically. It's abstemious. So of course I'm well. Thank God, said his son, smiling. God has nothing to do with it. Well, go on, he continued, returning to his hobby. Tell me how the Germans have taught you to fight Bonaparte by this new science you call strategy. I really like this Tikhon character. He's cool. Prince Andrew smiled. Give me time to collect my wits, father, said he with a smile that showed his father's foibles did not prevent his son from loving and honoring him. Why, I have not yet had time to settle down. Nonsense, nonsense, cried the old man, shaking his pigtail to see whether it was firmly plated, grasping his by the hand. The house for your wife is ready. Princess Mary will take her there and show her over, and I'll talk 19... Pox for you. I don't know. Yeah, I'll do what I can to keep getting you folks this show. I might have to make some changes to my internet for your for your sake. But yeah. In the meantime, sorry for the inconvenience. This will have to be the part 2. War and Peace. So yeah, Prussia is related to Germany. It originated in 1525. Yeah, Prussia is not declaring a side, is what War and Peace is saying. Yeah, sorry for the interruption, folks. It happened when I was Googling Prussia. It's like bandwidth. It's like only so many things can pass through the stream. Austria. Yeah, it's all Central Europe. Yeah, it's all Central Europe. Said he, rising from his chair and pacing up and down the room, followed by Tikhon, who ran after him, handing him different articles of clothing. What of Sweden? How will they cross Pomerania? Prince Andrew, seeing that his father insisted, began, at first reluctantly but gradually with more and more animation, and from habit changing unconsciously from Russian to French as he went on, to explain the plan of operation for the coming campaign. He explained how an army, 90,000 strong, was to threaten Prussia so as to bring her out of her neutrality and draw her into war. But how of that army was to join some Swedish forces at Stralsund. How 220,000 Austrians with 100,000 Russians were to operate in Italy and on the Rhine. How 50,000 Russians and as many English were to land at Naples, and how a total force of 500,000 men was to attack the French from different sides. The old prince did not even evince the least interest during this explanation, but, as if he were not listening to it, continued to dress while walking about, and 3 times unexpectedly interrupted. Once he stopped it by shouting, "The white one, the white one." This meant that Tikhon was not handing him the waistcoat that he wanted. Another time he interrupted, saying, "And will she soon be confined?" and shaking his head reproachfully, said, "That's bad. Go on, go on." Yeah. It's like Napoleon was, I'd say, pretty successful from a military perspective, especially when you consider all these numbers, resources, and finances that were stacked against him. Like, he was pretty much a badass, militaristically. The third interruption came when Prince Andrew was finishing his description. The old man began to sing, in the cracked voice of old age. Malbruxen vatenger, deset quan reviendra. Which means Marlborough is going to the wars. God knows when he'll return. His son only smiled. "I don't say it's a plan I approve of," said the son. "I'm only telling you what it is. Napoleon has also formed his plan by now. Not worse than this one." "Well, you've told me nothing new," and the old man repeated meditatively and rapidly. "Dix-sept quand reviendra." Go to the dining room. So in this chapter we have a chance to see the interactions between Prince Andrew and his father, old Tikhon. Prince Andrew, as a quick recap, is getting ready to go off to war, and they're talking about strategy, how to best confront Napoleon's forces, how to form different strategic alliances with different nations, how to improve their overall chances of winning the war with Napoleon. And as I've said, if you look at Napoleon's record through the Napoleonic Wars, he was actually pretty capable. So they had their work cut out for them. Okay. So that was War and Peace, chapter 26. Let's take a look in Sapiens. He was talking a lot about happiness, how it's measured and quantified, and we're talking about how it's subjective, how there are different ways of seeing happiness. Chapter 20, The End of Homo Sapiens. This book began by presenting history as the next stage in the continuum of physics to chemistry to biology. Sapiens are subject to the same physical forces, chemical reactions, and natural selection processes that govern all living beings. Natural selection may have provided Homo sapiens with a much larger playing field than it has given to any other organism. But the field still had its boundaries. The implication has been that, no matter what their efforts and achievements, sapiens are incapable of breaking free of their biologically determined limits. But as the 21st century unfolds, this is no longer true. Homo sapiens is transcending those limits. It is now beginning to break the laws of natural selection, replacing them with the laws of intelligent design. Yeah, it's just very hard to say, what the hallmarks will be for the next iteration of Homo sapiens. It's how will we know when we have evolved to the next stage? How will we, what do we need to look for in humans to know that we've evolved past Homo sapiens, or Homo sapiens sapiens, as it's called in scientific and archaeological circles. For close to 4 billion years, every single organism on the planet evolved subject to natural selection. Not even one was designed by an intelligent creator. The giraffe, for example, got its long neck thanks to its competition between archaic giraffes rather than to the whims of a super intelligent being. It's they were able to survive because they were able to use those long necks to get food from high up treetops that other shorter necked animals weren't able to get access to. Thereby, they were subject to the process of natural selection. Giraffes with long necks had better mating outcomes and long-term survival strategies. And that's the reason why we have giraffes today, not the short neck versions. Proto-giraffes who had longer necks had access to more food and consequently produced more offspring than did those with shorter necks. So yeah, you will also explain. Nobody, certainly not the giraffes, said a long neck would enable giraffes to munch leaves off of the treetops. Let's extend it. The beauty of Darwin's theory is that it does not need to assume an intelligent designer to explain how giraffes ended up with long necks. I would say humans are still subject to natural selection. Which guys get to mate? The tallest guys, the funniest guys, the smartest guys, the richest guys. Women look for the smartest, the richest, strongest, tallest. Those are the ones women go for. So yes, we're still subject to natural selection. We haven't evolved past that yet. We're still on that level. For billions of years, intelligent design was not even an option, because there was no intelligence which could design such things. Microorganisms, which until quite recently were the only living things around, are capable of amazing feats. A microorganism belonging to one species can incorporate genetic codes from a completely different species into its cell and thereby gain new capabilities, such as resistance to antibiotics. Yet, as best we know, microorganisms have no consciousness, no aims in life, and no ability to plan ahead. At some stage, organisms such as giraffes, dolphins, chimpanzees, and Neanderthals evolved consciousness and the ability to plan ahead. But even if a Neanderthal fantasized about fowls so fat and slow moving that he could just scoop them up whenever he was hungry, he had no way of turning that fantasy into reality. I think selective breeding would facilitate that. So it became true over time. He had to hunt birds that had been naturally selected. So this is before the time when that was the case. The first crack in the old regime appeared about 10,000 years ago, during the agricultural revolution. Sapiens who dreamed of fat, slow-moving chickens discovered that if they mated the fattest hen with the slowest cock, some of their offspring would be both fat and slow. Again, selective breeding, as I've said. It's like that's like the core concept. If you mated those offspring with each other, you could produce a line of fat, slow birds. It was a race of chickens unknown to nature, produced by the intelligent design not of God but of a man. Still, compared to an all-powerful deity, Homo sapiens had limited design skills. Sapiens could use selective breeding to detour around and accelerate the natural selection processes that had normally affected chickens, but they could not introduce completely new characteristics that were absent from the genetic pool of wild chickens. In a way, the relationship between Homo sapiens and chickens was similar to many other symbiotic relationships that have so often arisen on their own in nature. Sapiens exerted peculiar selective pressures on chickens that caused the fat and slow ones to proliferate, just as pollinating bees select flowers, causing the bright, colorful ones to proliferate. So too, will the future of our species have a bunch of handsome, tall, smart, athletic, superhumans. Superhumans. Today, the 4 billion-year-old regime of natural selection is facing a completely different challenge. In laboratories throughout the world, scientists are engineering living beings. They break the laws of natural selection with impunity, unbridled even by an organism's original characteristics. Eduardo Kac, a Brazilian bio-artist, decided in 2000 to create a new work of art, a fluorescent green rabbit. I guess maybe that's the answer to the question. It's like when we can bioengineer, build the perfect dudes and women through bioengineering, that's when we reach the next stage. Like bioengineering, I think, is the key. Eduardo Kac, he created the green rabbit. Kac contacted a French laboratory and offered it a fee to engineer a radiant bunny according to his specifications. The French scientist took a run-of-the-mill white rabbit embryo, implanted in its DNA a gene taken from a green fluorescent jellyfish, and voila, one green fluorescent rabbit for Le Monsieur. Kac named the rabbit Alba. It's impossible to explain the existence of Alba through the laws of natural selection. She is the product of intelligent design. She's also a harbinger of things to come. If the potential Alba signifies is realized in full, and if humankind doesn't annihilate itself meanwhile, the scientific revolution might prove itself far greater than a mere historical revolution. It may turn out to be the most important biological revolution since the appearance of life on Earth. After 4 billion years of natural selection, Alba stands at the dawn of a new cosmic era, in which life will be ruled by intelligent design. If this happens, the whole of human history up to that point might, with hindsight, be reinterpreted as a process for experimentation and apprenticeship that revolutionized the game of life. Such a process should be understood from a cosmic perspective of billions of years, rather than from a human perspective of millennia. Biologists the world over are locked in battle with the intelligent design movement, which opposes the teaching of Darwinian evolution in schools and claims that biological complexity proves there must be a creator who thought out all biological details in advance. It's like, I don't know, I think it's a ridiculous debate. It's like scientists are going to say it happened that way because of nature. Religious folks are going to say it happened that way because of God. It's like, Who do you want to listen to? It's just two different ways of saying the same thing, in my opinion. The biologists are right about the past, but the proponents of intelligent design might ironically be right about the future. At the time of writing, the replacement of natural selection by intelligent design could happen in any of three ways. Through biological engineering, cyborg engineering. Cyborgs are beings that combine organic with non-organic parts, or the engineering of inorganic life. Yeah, I don't think intelligent design is the case at all. I think we're trending toward like Rick and Morty levels, where it's like scientists are doing what previously was not possible because of the advances in science, research, technology. And the next chapter is of mice and men in Sapiens. But yeah, I think humans are and will continue to be the ones defining and deciding what is possible in our reality. Like extremely smart people. Like before Albert Einstein, there were no nuclear bombs. Just as one example. Like I should say it all. It's like scientists and smart people will determine like what our race is capable of, and it will only continue to be the case in the future. But that basically was Sapiens for today. Hope you all enjoyed our reading series, and we'll have to see what ground we cover next. And until next time, thank you for watching. Stormer Show signing off.